It wasn't always pretty, but the Badgers got a massively needed win against UCLA at the Kohl Center. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Harings. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network. We really do appreciate it. Let's talk the UCLA win. What went right? What went wrong? Your thoughts. Drop any questions you have in the chat. We got Mike behind the mic. We also got the great Coach Gauthier joining us today. Always good when we're able to get him on. It just brings a deeper depth to the conversation. Coach, we always start here. What went right? What went wrong? What went right in this game for you, for Wisconsin?
What went right was their start, Ryan. Particularly the first media timeout, first 10 minutes, first half. What did they go? First half, they went 8 for 16 from three, 50%, jumped out, got to a big lead early, had good ball movement, good player movement. I think that start was especially offensively, just shooting from the perimeter is something this team needed. And it's a good thing they got out to that quick start as the rest of the game got a little close for comfort.
I liked how they were running their offense first half. What went right? It was a lot of passing up okay shots to get better ones, multiple passes on the perimeter. I thought Boyd did a really good job of getting into the paint and then trying to find different players, shooters. It just the offense felt like it was a little more cohesive. And I think that leads to what you were saying, that we talk a lot about, well, they shot well or they shot poorly. And certainly UCLA shot poorly today, but there's a lot of, did you run good offense? Well, that's why you shot well. Or did you run bad offense? Or did you play good defense? That's maybe why they didn't shoot well. I thought the Badgers ran pretty good offense in the first half, and that's partially why they shot well. And I thought that was nice to see.
No question. I thought, and you just mentioned this, Ryan, but, out of 4 of those threes in the first half, I can think off the top of my head were an extra pass, a one more pass. So one more pass is, you hit one guy and he has an open shot, but he passes up a good shot for a great shot. And they had 4 of those in the first half where a guy made an extra pass that led to an uncontested 3. And that's to what you were saying, Ryan. I thought the passing and the ball movement in the first half was as good as it's been for the Badgers in a while. Now, the second half was a different story in terms of that, but it was nice to see at least that in the first half.
There was even a point, I think this was in the second half, it felt like they were overpassing, where nobody got a shot up. They hit 3 or 4 different guys on the perimeter, and then it kicked back around to Boyd, and he had to drive in and try to create something. But I feel like I'll take a little bit of that because this offense has been so stagnant at times. Let's shift a little bit to maybe what didn't go great. What didn't you love about it? I'll lead off on here. For me, I thought the transition defense was, and I feel like this has been a thing for 2 years with this staff and this team. There was a couple plays where UCLA just got somebody open. We didn't communicate. Wisconsin didn't communicate. I also thought UCLA walked into a lot of threes in transition where, too many players ran to the paint. You didn't communicate. You didn't match up. I thought there was just too many open, easy looks in transition. Some of that is, I thought there were moments where there were some players jogging back, where instead of sprinting back, finding guys communicating, UCLA had too many open looks in transition for me.
I agree. That especially early, and a lot of those transition baskets and looks you're talking about, Ryan, is when the Badgers shoot a 3-pointer from a guard, and it just seems like on a long perimeter 3, there isn't anybody getting back. You can't expect the bigs to get back because they're in the paint going for an offensive rebound, but there's just Blackwell had one where he shot a 3, nobody got back, led to a layup, and then I forgot who took another 3 that led to a transition layup. And Ryan, you very astute in saying that they were very lucky that UCLA went 1 for 17 from 3 because, to your point, they had a lot of wide open transition looks, and it's something the Badgers have struggled with for a couple of years now, and at some point they're going to have to clean up or it's going to cost them a game.
What else maybe that you saw that you thought you wanted to see a little bit more of, defensively, offensively, whatever it is, today's
Yeah,
game?
JY just made a good point. To me, it's just the inconsistency of the Badgers game. He stated, show flash of greatness, then it bogs down and it ends with the flashes of eighth grade decision making. And I couldn't agree more. It's a great point by Jay White that, they're just inconsistent. It seems like been a problem for, to me, two plus seasons now. When they get a lead, get up to 20, they kind of take their foot off the gas and they let teams creep back into it. I mean, UCLA got it down to 9 late in the first half before Wisconsin got it back up a little bit, and then even down the stretch they got it down to 7. And you would just like to see a little more consistency, from start to finish. They have those lulls, like you were saying, Ryan, where they're just kind of standing around, they over dribble, too much ISO ball. I just would like to see them put together 40 minutes. I think if they would put together a solid 40 minutes, this team could be pretty difficult to beat.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. It's just we talk about it the first half offensively, and then you don't see that for stretches. It's just the inconsistency offensively, defensively. I wonder if some of that is this team essentially went 6 deep today. I mean, you got 5 minutes from Kins, 5 minutes from Garlick, but in reality, they basically went 6.5 deep, we'll call it. It's tough to play up and down and want to play at pace offensively if you're not very deep.
Absolutely. That's a really good point, especially because not only like like you were stating, they were 6 deep, but at 6 deep, I mean, they only really had one, well, I guess, winner, but they just had Billy and Winter where they're only 2 bigs. I mean, Garlick played a handful of minutes tonight, but like you said, Ryan, they were very thin. So a point well taken that, they probably got tired in some of those stretches. And, it's a lot to battle through when you're playing with a very short bench and a small bench from a physicality and size standpoint.
Let me ask you this one. I would love to pick your brain on here. Obviously, not the. It was still a nice win. The Badgers won by 8 points. UCLA. I think this is going to be a quad 2 win. That's a good win for Wisconsin. How big is it to get a win like this? Didn't play maybe the prettiest game at times, maybe not the most consistent, but you got to win games like this at home to get your way back into the tournament.
Absolutely. Winning pretty, ugly, whatever. All that matters is you get that W in the left-hand column. And to your point, Ryan, I think it was a huge win. They needed it. They go to Michigan on Saturday. That one's could be hard to get. So they had to get this one. Like you said, they don't have a lot of quad 2 wins, or quad 1s, this year. So from that standpoint, it's good. Also, they got to 2-2. You got to protect the home. You got to win at home and then steal some on the road. So, it wasn't as pretty as you would like, especially with the start they got off of. But again, all that matters is it was a win, and it was a win over a tournament team, and it was a Big Ten win. So, they did what they had to do. I think as the season goes on, this could turn out to be a very important win.
Yeah, I think they absolutely needed it. Brian, this is a good point here. First win of the year where they were evenly matched. UCLA is a good team. UCLA, they were a little banged up, but UCLA is a well-coached team. They play hard defensively typically. This is a good win for Wisconsin that they needed. Coach, player of the game for you?
It's going to sound like a broken record, but my guy Nolan Winter. Nolan was 4 for 9 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, 8 for 9 from the free throw line, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, no turnovers, 35 minutes. Just short of a double-double, which he already has 7 double-doubles on the year. Again, got off to a quick start. I wish he would have gotten more looks, touched the ball more in the second half. But again, I thought he was physical. I loved the foul at the end of the game.
I did too.
I love that.
I did too.
Showing a little nastiness to him. I think the Badgers need more of that. A little attitude. I just thought, and he's been good all year, but I just thought, especially in the beginning, UCLA had no answer for him to start off the game. And, I just think it's a great point. Not a flagrant foul, but a hard foul. and I love the attitude of not giving up 3 points. So I'd have to go with Nolan Winter.
I love what Winter has shown this year. There was a play, I mentioned it in the Discord, probably nondescript, won't even really show up in the box score, but there was a play where UCLA had a fast break and Nolan Winter sprinted down the court, got the defensive rebound. Despite being the only real big that is really flying around out there, him sprinting up and down the court to clean up the glass, dude, he's wired a little differently. I love Nolan. I like aggressive Nolan. I want to hit on this in a second because I put this in the Discord too. I don't think they feature him enough. I think they go too many possessions where Nolan Winter doesn't touch the ball. And I want to hit on that next. We have to take a quick second for our friends of the show. I want to give you my player of the game next as well. If you're in the chat, if you disagree with Nolan Winter as a player of the game, put your player of the game in the chat as well. We'll get to that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. A quick second to say thank you for tuning into Locked On Badgers. Today's episode brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. College football playoffs are here. There's been, listen, especially that Ole Miss game, there's been some crazy games. Right now, FanDuel's giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game of the playoffs, because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on your bets that you already feel good about. So you can ride with the favorite when you think the team controls the matchup. You can take a shot on the underdog if you feel that upset coming, or build a parlay on the players in the moments that you think will decide the game. Then you apply the profit boost and you go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in the action all playoff long. Visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every game day over at FanDuel. Okay, let's get into this. I want to talk really quick, Coach. My player of the game, it was Nick Boyd or Nolan Winter. So I'm going to talk about Boyd for a second. I think the energy he plays with is infectious. I think you kind of need a guy like that. It doesn't have to be your point guard, but you need somebody like that. Finished with 20 points. The thing I really like about, the thing I really liked also today about Boyd, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 turnover. Anytime you're getting a 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, the dude had 8 rebounds. Tremendous game. Nolan Winter, Nick Boyd, I think you could flip a coin there.
Yeah, and a lot of our listeners have mentioned that Boyd's their player of the game, and I agree, Ryan. The 8 rebounds, especially in tonight, we just talked about Winter. Just looking at the box score, out of the front court players, Winter had 8 rebounds. Biliauskas had 1. Garlic had 0. Yeah. So our front court only had 9 rebounds. 8 of them came from Nolan, and then Boyd had 8 on his own. I mean, that's an excellent effort. And a great choice on your part by Boyd. And like you said, to go with 5 assists, I thought, that was really important. I thought he was solid on the defensive end, and, he plays with an edge too. And I think the Badgers need that. And he had a really good game. I do have a question for you, Ryan. You think the UCLA coaching staff knows that he's left-handed yet? Because it blows my mind.
Same. Thank you.
How they just let him get to his left hand all game long. And that I don't have an answer for it, but I'm glad they allowed Nick to get to his strong hand, but all night long. I mean, his left hand was there all game, and UCLA just didn't seem to know on the scouting report that he was going to go left.
It's unbelievable to me. There was a game, I think it was like the 3rd game of the year, and I don't even remember who we were playing, and their defenders were set up so hard on his left hand. And I said, see, that's what's going to happen in the Big Ten. They're going to completely take that. They're going to overplay it so dramatically. It's really good impact. And I'm still seeing defenders close out seemingly without a clue. It's insane to me, dude. It's a great catch on your part. I don't understand why more players aren't trying to take away the left.
Absolutely. And I got to give a shout out to Will Hendrickson. He, I actually recruited Will back in the day when I was at D2. He did not choose the UMSL Tritons, but I don't hold it against him. He's a friend of mine, and he's a good dude.
What was the best part of his game?
He was just that doing all the little things, the dirty things in a game to make a lot. Wasn't a big score or anything like that, but whatever the team needed on both ends of the floor, he was just solid.
Dude, I absolutely love that. I love the connections that come out in this community. So I talked to you about this before the break, and I want to ping you on this because I put this in the Discord second half at some point, and I said there's too many possessions where the Badgers go where Nolan Winter doesn't get a chance to impact the game. It drives me nuts because efficiency wise, he was 4-9. He was 8-9 from the free throw line. Teams don't have an answer for him at times, but we just don't ever really. I don't feel like we run enough sets for him.
Yeah, and Clint Prom agrees with what Ryan's saying. I don't understand it either because, for example, those I marked on my notes, the first 3 possessions of the second half, Winter didn't touch the ball and they shot 3 threes. And that was one point I wanted to bring up. Yeah, that the first half they were 50% from 3, but in the second half they were 2 for 14 from 3. They were 8 for 13 from 2, which is over 60%. Like their 2-point, we've talked a lot about this a lot, Ryan. Their 2-point percentage in these games have been really good, but yet they keep on just relying on the 3 when they've been efficient and productive from 2. And a lot of that is Nolan Winter. And I agree with you, Ryan. I just wish they would manufacture touches for him.
Why don't they? Because it's not always as easy as just saying, man, because sometimes players also they play a part in this, right? You can say feed the post. Well, if players aren't getting in post position, if they're not demanding it, what do they need to do? What would make sense within the context of the offense to get him more involved? Is maybe a better question.
It's difficult because, we've talked about it. Both Boyd and Blackwell are ball dominant, and obviously they need to eat too. So we talked about this in the past. There's only one basketball, and that's what makes it difficult. But I just think, to your point, Ryan, is maybe the coaching staff could stress making sure the ball at least goes through Nolan, before they look to create a different shot. Maybe get 2 or 3 ball reversals. Get in the offense to make sure he gets touches. They're not going to throw it to him in the post a lot. It just seems offensively it's just not how they're wired, not what they want to do. But, I'm with you. I would just really like to see the ball in his hands on more because on the perimeter, like you said, he's such a mismatch. Teams can't defend him out there in space, and he's capable of taking guys off the bounce, and he's just a hard defensive matchup for teams, and specifically in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think his game is so good, man. I thought he also did a really good job, especially initially in this game. There was a point earlier in this year where I was a little critical of Nolan Winter from a post defensive standpoint. I thought he was letting people catch it too close to the rim. People were setting up 6 feet away, 4 feet away, and then at that point, there's nothing you can do. I thought for the most part, he was limiting post touches 8 feet, 10 feet away. He was pushing people out a little bit more. There weren't a lot of easy dump-ins against him until he started switching, and that's not really on Nolan Winter. I just thought all around he played great. Give me a player maybe you thought you wanted to see a little bit more from.
I sound like a broken record again, but Kinzinger, I wish would play. I mean, he got 6 minutes tonight, or 7. Only had 1 shot. He had two steals. No turnovers. Janicki, what we talked about in the pre-show, got 24 minutes. I would like to see some of those minutes maybe go to Ken a little bit. It's hard because you had a short bench tonight. So I would think, Sammy brought up Carrington. I agree. Carrington probably could get a handful of minutes. The one thing about Carrington, and Ryan, you and I texted about this during the game, he just makes some questionable plays on the defense end. Like UCLA was 0 for 14 from 3, and he fouls the 3-point shooter in the corner on a contested shot. That led to a 5-0 quick run that the game went from 18 to 13 just like that. You just can't have those mistakes. He had the turnover when he caught in the corner where he dribbled it. Too much dribbling, and they took it from him. So I know stuff like that as a coaching staff, especially if you're a bench guy, you do things like that, your minutes are going to be limited.
Yeah, Carrington, to me, when he's able to play within his game, where he's kind of a 3-and-D guy, he's got tremendous arc on his shot. It's just a beautiful shot when he can set up and shoot it. But you don't want him dribbling. You don't want him being a decision maker or kind of that guy making the pivot decisions. But I would like to see him get a few more minutes. I think Kinzinger getting a few more minutes, and I hate to say it, but at the expense of Janicki probably. Janicki at 24 and Kins at 6 feels like you could work that more to 18 and 12, 16 and 12. You could find a better balance there, I think. I just think Janicki just doesn't shoot it well enough. And I know he hit a tough shot today, a really tough shot today that was in a big moment, but it's not consistent enough. And I think Kinzinger gives you more consistent, level minutes. There's less highs probably, but I think there's less lows.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, because the other thing with Janicki, and he missed again from the free throw. He shot, what was it, 33% from the foul line last year? We talked about this at the end of the last season, and he missed the front end of the 1-on-1 in the second half. I mean, he's and this is just my humble opinion. Obviously, the Badgers staff know way more about their team than I do, but I just think Janicki in 20, he's not a consistent enough shooter to be getting 25 minutes a game right now.
And Thomas says, yep, I don't know about that yet, Ryan. He's still getting his feet wet. Talking about Kins, he's not totally ready to take those minutes. It's a very fair point, and I agree with that. You look at the bench, and it's just bereft of answers, right? So, I agree with this point, but you don't have a ton of options other than to grow with some of the young guys.
No, and Thomas is right. He's not ready, but I think what you and I are both saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just say maybe knock Janicki down to 15 to 18 and get Ken up into the 8 to 10 minutes, 12 minute maybe, 12 minutes, 8 to 12 minutes a game to kind of even it out a little more. Because I do think, obviously, as he gets more experience, I think his offensive game is going to evolve, and he's just solid.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's about getting him more minutes so he can develop into a player that you can count on more down the road. Really quick, while we're on the theme of young guys, Will Garlock at 5 to 6 minutes today. I think you saw some of the concerns for people who want to just say, play Garlock at the 5, shift Winter to the 4, and that solves your problem at the 4. Garlock's young. He shouldn't be expected to carry the water yet. But you saw some of the issues on both sides of the ball with Garlock, getting beat off a bad closeout, and then offensively, he just gets sucked too close to the rim. He doesn't move real well. He doesn't create gravity. It's just not quite there yet for Will Garlock, and nor should it be. But I think you saw it today.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I have said this repeatedly. He's not ready. He's done a really good job. He's got a bright future. I know the Badgers are struggling because they don't have that depth. This is where losing, misevaluating that Gray situation and using a scholarship on Gray, and for off the floor reasons wasn't able to join the team. That's really hurting the Badgers from a depth standpoint, specifically in the front court. And it's putting Garlock in a position he probably doesn't need to be in right now.
We'll take a second there, come back, finish up with your comments, a few more thoughts on just this game, the importance of it. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. And a quick second, as always, to say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at Rugiet. Something we don't talk about a lot is just the stress in life. And stress can come from a lot of spots. Family, life, money, work. And it doesn't just switch off at night. And sometimes it doesn't switch off in the middle of a Badger game because of quarterback play. There's a lot of reasons for stress in our lives. And sometimes it shows up at the worst possible time. Rugiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. It's a next generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rugiet Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 minute, dissolves into your tongue, absorbs fast. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch, and you can connect with a board-certified doctor online, and then everything ships discreetly to your door. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. Let's take some comments, Coach. We have a bunch of starred ones. Pavel says, UCLA was 1 of 17 from 3, and you only win by 11 at home. Quick question on this, or a quick thought on this one. We talked a little bit about some of the transition threes. I thought there were open looks that the Badgers allowed. I also think in the half court, especially initially, I thought the Badgers played pretty well. I think there were misses that were forced. I think there were misses where the Badgers defense played a part. But thoughts on this comment here?
Yeah, it's a good point, but I also think that was the Badgers' defensive game plan. They were going to take away the paint, they were going to take away straight line drives, and they were going to force UCLA to beat them from the perimeter, especially with their best perimeter shooter Sky Clark being out. That was obviously the Badgers' game plan. Was they didn't think UCLA could shoot it well enough from the perimeter to beat them. Now, I don't think the Badgers were counting on them to go 1 for 17, but I do think that was their game plan. And I agree, Pavel, with the comment. But again, a win is a win. You take them any way you can get them.
Philip says Badgers struggled tremendously with ball pressure. This has been something for a couple of years now. Wisconsin has struggled when teams are able to light them up. I think Nick Boyd can deal with any type of ball pressure, but if you can get the ball out of his hands, I feel like Blackwell struggled more with aggressive perimeter defenders this year. I think people can get underneath Rhodey. They can force him away from the perimeter. There's not a secondary ball handler. That's where Kamari McGee last year was that.
I was just going to mention Kamari. Absolutely. I think your point, I think Boyd, I think he can handle it. Like you were saying, Ryan, I don't think it's an issue with him, but I don't really see anybody else. Ken is young, hasn't really faced that. It's a great point by Philip. I think it's something to keep an eye on as the season progresses. Thankfully, just the way college basketball is, and the Big Ten specifically, I don't think they're going to face a lot of teams that are going to be able to apply that sort of ball pressure on a consistent basis, but it is definitely something to keep an eye on.
What were your thoughts on Blackwell tonight? We had a couple comments in both good and bad. Like we had some comments.
Yep.
Blackwell looked more efficient getting to his spots. We also had comments. Blackwell shooting 1 of 9. You can't shoot 1 of 9 from the floor in the close game. Finished with 3 rebounds, a couple assists. Steven said Blackwell looked engaged. Badgerman Blackwell looked better as a point guard. I think people are all across the spectrum on John Blackwell right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm hard on Blackwell. I thought he played. It was one of his better games. Again, I still think and Joel's good. He's too inconsistent. I think he settles for threes way too much. He went 1 for 9 from threes. I thought, Robbie Hummel talked about how Blackwell struggled from twos so far this year. I thought tonight he was really good from 2. Had a couple good takes. I mean, I think UCLA cut it to 9 late, and he hit that fadeaway baseline J contested late shot clock, which was a huge shot. I just think he just is in love with his threes a little too much for my liking. I wish he would get paint touches, go to the basket, use his size and strength a little more. And I'm just hard on him defensively. He got beat on an out of bounds play. He got beat on a back door. There was a transition pass early in the game that I texted you, Ryan, that if he even is looking at the ball or gives forth any effort, he intercepts it. They end up getting a layup out of it. Inconsistent. Krabs is, again, I just think his inconsistency, but he's showing flashes of. Somebody made a point earlier about him being more of a point forward tonight. I thought he did a good job with that. So I see his game coming along. We just need to see more of it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it to me too, and people in the community. It's just the consistency. He had a great flash to the elbow. I think it was the first. I forget what first or second half, where late shot clock flash to the elbow, caught it, really smooth jumper on balance. Yes, he had another great play in the second half where he drove in, kicked it to Rhodey in the corner for a wide open 3. Yes, dude, and that baseline shot you hit when Boyd went out. Blackwell had to run the offense, took it baseline, fadeaway jumper. But there's too many moments where I wish he would live more in the mid-range. I wish he would get in the mid-post, couple dribbles. He has an incredible fadeaway. He has a great body. He can get to the free throw line. I would love for him to live in that area and then the Badgers to play out of that. And that could solve some of the Badgers' issues of who do we throw it into when we need an easy bucket. But I think you're right. I think it's too many three-pointers. I don't think he's consistent enough defensively. And we're both kind of hard on him, but we're both kind of hard on him because he has every skill set you need to be a consistent and efficient 20-point scorer in college basketball.
Yeah, we've seen him do it, right? He's a great player. The Badgers need him to be their best player. and I don't think he's done that consistently enough. We hold him to a high standard because have great belief in him and his abilities. I think with his 3-point shooting, the reason why like tonight's a low percentage, a lot of those threes are contested threes. It's one thing if you go 1 for 9 from 3 and they're uncontested and you just have an off shooting night, but I think he shot a low percentage because a lot of those attempts were contested.
Clint said yes. Ryan, yes. I think the NBA trial got Blackwell off his natural game, trying to do more things. They probably, and I'm sure if you're listening, if you're going to the NBA, if Blackwell's going to make it there in Carpenter role, he's going to be a 3-and-D guy.
No, and that 100%. And we talked about this in the summer. You and I mentioned this. This was one thing because we saw it with, Nigel Hayes. You know, when he tested the NBA waters, he was so good backing guys down, playing in that mid post range. And then he came back after testing the NBA waters and he was dead set to show everybody that he could make 3-pointers, and he wasn't a good 3-point shooter, and he had not a very good year. And I think Blackwell Badger Man's right. He's averaging 17, but Badger Man, I would say too, on how many attempts, how efficient are those 17 points a game.
Would you put any stock or thought into using him more as a primary playmaker? We've had several people talk about Boyd is very comfortable just driving in the paint, scoring. If Blackwell wants to be more of that point forward, just letting him initiate more offense, not taking the point guard responsibilities from Boyd necessarily, but playing like a point forward.
I like that. As long as my only caveat to that, because I agree, they started Boyd in the right-hand corner a lot. Why they do that? So he can come off ball screens to his left, which is a really good, good piece of coaching by the Badgers and their staff. My only thing with having Blackwell having the ball in his hands, as long as that ball gets to the second, third side, as long as he's initiating offense and he's not trying to create something off that initial bounce, I think it can work. It can be a good idea as long as he doesn't get over aggressive with it.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And Thomas, I think we've talked about this a lot, is still him and Boyd trying to figure each other out. Hopefully they'll figure it out soon. Coach, anything else that I didn't hit on that you wanted to hit on that you had in your notes that you thought was interesting here?
No, I think, I know the Badgers, the broadcasters keep mentioning this, and I know they keep mentioning it because in their conversations with Coach Gard and his staff, they want Rhodey to initiate more offense. And that's the one thing I agree with our great listeners' comments. Boyd and Blackwell are trying to figure each other out. I still think Rhodey is trying to figure how he fits in this. And I think if he could touch the ball a little more on the offense end, I thought he had a pretty solid game. I thought he was really good defensively. He had 6 rebounds. I thought he was good on the glass. So if the Badgers are going to get to where they need, they're going to have to, somebody mentioned this earlier. They have 4 guys. They got Blackwell, Boyd, Rhodey, and Winter. Those guys are going to have to be their best players night in, night out as they continue to play in the Big Ten.
I love that. I would love if you could engage Rhodey more as that playmaker. I think especially in certain matchups, because the one thing I saw this on film last year when he's at Virginia, better perimeter defenders can get underneath him and they can push him out. But if he's got this 3rd or 4th best, because the number 1 guy's on Blackwell, the number 2 guy's on Boyd, if he's just got a mediocre wing defender on him, I would love to engage him in more pick and roll, more action, put those guys in conflict. Have Boyd in the right corner, Blackwell in the left, Nolan Winter maybe rolling. I think you can get a lot going there. I do think the one thing this team misses, and this was going to be Rap, that would make this really dynamic, is that deep spacer. Somebody who just
spacer
gravity. Yeah. Who is that on this team?
I don't think, to your point, I don't think they have one. I agree with you, Ryan. I think the whole plan from the staff was it was going to be Rap, and it's not. And so I think that's part of the reason why we see struggles from Boyd and Blackwell at times, because like you said, they don't have that floor spacer. They don't have that Tanjay. That's why Blackwell, I think we talk about how Blackwell was able to get to the rim, get to the basket more easier last year. Well, because he had more space to work with, because teams had to take away Tanjay. And this team right now just doesn't have that floor spacer. It's a great point on your part.
Yeah, and it still could be Rap. It still could be Rap later this year or next year. The dude shot really well last year. It's there somewhere. Last question here, Coach, from Jay Jagavi. Is Boyd an NBA guy?
I think he'll have an opportunity to G League, catch on as, maybe a two-way contract. My thing is two things. He's quick, but he's not overly athletic. He doesn't have elite point guard size, and he's an inconsistent shooter. We all know in the NBA, you have to be able, and I kind of agree with Alan. I'm not sure that he is an NBA level guy just because, he doesn't have the size and doesn't shoot it consistently enough that the NBA prefers.
Yeah, I think not having a right hand and not being a 40% three-point shooter probably means you're not. But it also means you're probably going to go play 8 years in Europe and make a really nice living.
Yeah, he's going to make a lot of money. I mean, this is not to discourage him or Blackwell or anybody else. I mean, you're talking the NBA is 0.1% of the 1% of the 1%. I mean, these guys are freaks of nature. And, so like you said, Ryan, him, Blackwell, others, a lot of money to be made overseas where they can play the game they love and provide for their family and have a good living.
Yeah, I'm sure you hit on it. And I'll wrap this up on the way out. You've probably been in gyms with NBA guys or guys on the way to NBA. I've been in places where I've seen some of those guys work out at times. I worked out with a guy who's playing overseas in Europe. Dude, they are so good. They are so good. Watch a guy shoot in the gym. That's an NBA guy.
It's a great point. So back when I coached high school in St. Louis, I coached Drew Hanlon, and Drew Hanlon is a pure sweat NBA, works with the top NBA guys. And I remember when I first got into coaching or whatever, he's worked out Jason Tatum, Beal, but his first client was David Lee. So David Lee it was in the summer off season. He was playing for the Warriors. He comes in to our gym at Webster Groves and they're doing a workout. He takes 100 threes. He made 96 of them, Ryan.
Yeah, exactly.
And he wasn't even considered a great NBA shooter, but they're uncontested, but he made 96 out of 100. And when I do go to NBA games or we'll have NBA teams come through our facilities and practice, and it just blows my mind. Every one of those guys can make a shot. The shooting ability for those players in the NBA it's elite, and it's something to behold.
That's why, and we could talk. You and I, we've learned this. We could talk hoops for hours, and I just keep going. Like that's why when people tell me there's a misnomer, well, they don't play defense in the NBA anyway. Nobody up there, dude. You can't. They're elite defenders. They're incredible, but you can't defend in the NBA because the guys are all insane. The spacing's incredible. Everybody can shoot. Everything's a foul. You can't defend those guys.
I've been lucky enough, just being in the game and knowing some people I know but I urge all, any basketball fan or whatever, and I know it's very expensive, but if you ever have an opportunity to go to an NBA game. Thank you, Claire. Also, I want to give a shout out to my girl, Carolyn. She always supports me. I love it. But if you ever get a chance to go to an NBA game, and if you can't get floor seats, maybe get there early and go down pregame, just looking at the size of those individuals and how small they make a basketball floor look, it's incredible, Ryan, to your point. They're enormous. They're all so incredibly skilled, talented. A lot of people say it's a one-on-one ISO game. Well, it's a one-on-one ISO game, to your point, Ryan, is because those guys are elite defenders. I mean, There's just not room. There's not space. They're ginormous, talented, athletic freak shows that are playing, on a 94-foot floor that looks like a size of a ping pong table to you and I. I mean, they're just the amount of talent those guys have. It's unbelievable. And even, being on the D1 level, but I always say it, whether you're D1, D2, D3, NAIA players, those guys are so good. In Wisconsin, the D3 basketball in the state of Wisconsin is incredible. If you play any sort of college basketball, I don't care what level, they're extremely talented men and women that play the game.
Yeah, that's really well said. He is Coach Gauthier. Always stoked when we're able to have him on. Thank you to Mike behind the mic, as always, for you people in the chat. These shows are monumentally better. For those of you who remember my live shows without Mike, they're train wrecks. I don't know how anybody listened. I don't know why anybody subscribed. Y'all should have gone to competitor channels. With Mike behind the mic, it's so much better, and so grateful to have him donating his time. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Everybody's going to watch us later on Wisconsin. Badgers pick up a big win. The chain says Dwight Howard almost stepped on me once. That's a story we're going to have to get.
Absolutely. I want to hear that story.
Yeah, we're going to have to get that one. I think Mitch is a hooper. He was saying earlier.
We'll have to hear that story because I have a good, this will be a later show at a different time, but I have a great Dwight Howard story too. So maybe we'll have to have a Dwight Howard segment out of nowhere.
You know what we're going to need to do? We're going to do a locked up like 5-on-5 event.
Yeah.
Locked on where we get, in the community, we'll get in the gym and we'll run a little bit with the locked on community.
Yeah. Or I'll play horse, or I'll take somebody on and horse or pig so I don't blow out an Achilles.
Dude, that'd be awesome. Let's do that on Wisconsin. Thank you guys so much. And we will definitely talk. We'll talk more tomorrow as we always do.